In this video, we are going to discuss 7 critical chess traps that can simply enhance your game and simply boost your game by 100%. The traps we are going to discuss can simply frequently land in your position many times, oftenly. So it's going to be extremely critical video to improve your game. So now let's quickly check it out. So coming to the trap number 1, we are playing with the black pieces and our opponent starts the game with a 1e4. And we play the move c5, also known as the Sicilian defense, and a very common and most popular opening. Knight f3, e6, d4, pawn takes, knight takes, and we play the move knight f6. And if white is thinking over the board, he must be thinking to play the move e5, try to capture the knight. And it's a very common move, very natural move to push the pawn, try to hit the knight, because if knight move, white can even play the move c4, attacking the knight again, and white is having a better position. So after playing e5, congratulations, we are now winning the game by playing the move queen to a5 check, and now we are also going to capture the e5 pawn. So after knight c3, we simply capture the pawn, it's a check, and we are simply a pawn up, we are winning the game. So if at the place of knight c3, if white tries to play the move bishop d2 attacking the queen, we capture the pawn, giving a check, so knight have to move because the knight was also hanging. So now we can simply capture the b2 pawn as well, and now we are 2 pawns up, having a winning game, and this is win. So this was the trap number 1, a very nice trap, a very nice mini trap, and this particular trap can simply land in your game very often because this is the very most common human move. So this was the trap number 1, so now let's jump to the trap number 2. Coming to the trap number 2, we are playing with the white pieces. We start the game with 1e4. Our opponent plays the move c5, the Sicilian defense. We play the move knight f3 and our d6, very standard way to play the Sicilian defense. And we play the move c3, also known as the R-up in variation. The idea is to play the move d4 and try to grab the center. Here our opponent plays the move knight f6, trying to capture the e4 pawn. And here, surprisingly, we are going to develop our bishop to e2. And our opponent is thinking that we simply have blundered a pawn, and our idea is to simply short castle. So he happily captures the pawn, and congratulations, we are winning the game because we play the move queen to a4 check, followed by the knight is hanging on e4. And it doesn't matter now what black does, we simply capture the knight, come back on c2, and it's winning position for white. We are simply a whole piece up. And if, after bishop e2, if black realizes that queen f4 is coming up, so he can't really capture the pawn, and he simply continues the development with knight to c6, stopping this queen f4 ideas with check, and now he is preparing to capture the e4 pawn. So what we are going to do, we are simply going to push the pawn to d3, defending the pawn, opening up the bishop, and it's going to simply castle. Our future ideas could be to play the move queen c2 followed by d4, and the position is already good. There are no real problems in a position, and it's completely fine position for white. So this was the trap number 2. So now let's move on to the trap number 3. Coming to the trap number 3, we are playing with the white pieces. We start the game with 1e4. Our opponent plays the move c6, also known as the Karugan defense. d4, d5, knight c3, black captures, and play the move knight to d7. After knight d7, black's idea is to develop the other knight to f6, so that for example after knight f3, knight f6, takes, black is having a pretty fine position. If black plays the move knight f6, instantly we can simply capture the knight, and black is having this double pawn which black is not happy with. That is the reason black first develops the knight to d7, now his idea is to develop the another knight and have a good pawn structure. So after knight to d7, we are going to play the move queen to e8, a very sneaky trap. Our opponent simply continues with knight f6, a very natural way to play. Now comes the move knight to d6, and congratulations, it's a checkmate. Black cannot capture the knight because the pawn is pinned, and second, the knight is simply hitting the king, and it's a mate. So yeah, it's a mate, and if for instance, if any player from the black side have seen this particular trap, and he already knows that knight d6 is coming up, so he simply develops his another knight. Still, no need to worry up. Black is attacking the pawn, we simply defend it. We capture the knight, we come back with the queen, we develop our pieces nicely, and an important thing is, we do a long castle in the position. And eventually after a couple of moves, we have a very harmonious position in the board, where we have done an opposite castle. But a good thing is, we have the bishop pair, which our opponent also has, but our bishop is already looking at the king side, where I guess this particular position is much easier to play with the white pieces. We can put our knight to e5, we can play the move h4, h5, h6, followed by g4, maybe f3. Simply just centralizing our rooks by playing the move rook e1, and the position is completely harmonious. And there are no issues. It's a completely fine position to play with the white pieces. So this was the trap number 3. So now let's move on to the trap number 4. Coming to the trap number 4, we are playing with the black pieces, and our opponent starts the game with 1 e4. e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, and we play the move knight to d4. White is thinking that we have already blundered a pawn, so he happily captures the pawn. If he captures the knight, we are having no problems because materially it's an equal position. We can play the move c6, g5, and it's a happy position. We are having no real issues. We can even play the move c5, trying to defend the d4 pawn. So white captures the pawn, which is a very natural move, and we play the move queen to g5, trying to attack the knight. Our opponent captures another pawn, thinking that now we have blundered our queen or the rook. Congratulations, it's winning because we are going to capture the pawn on g2. And here white is having two options. He can either play the move rook to f1, or he can go for capturing the rook. If he first tries to defend, we can capture the pawn. Obviously, queen e2 will simply lead to a queen loss. So white has to play the move bishop e2. But congratulations, it's a mate. Knight to f3, it's a mate. White cannot capture the knight because the bishop is pinned, and it's a mate. So now coming back, what happens if white tries to capture the knight? If white tries to capture the rook, here we are simply going to capture the rook, bishop f1, the fourth move, queen takes pawn. Again, queen e2 would lead to a queen loss, so bishop e2 is the fourth move. Now we capture the pawn on c2, giving a check. If you could try to capture the knight, I can simply capture the queen, so it's winning for black. So white has to move the king, and now comes the move queen to h1, checkmate, and there is no way for white to escape, and it's a mate. So this was a very this trap is also known as the Blackburn shilling trap. So it's a very nice trap. So this was the fourth trap. So now let's move on to the fifth trap. Coming on to the fifth trap, we are playing with the black pieces, and our opponent starts the game with 1 e4. e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, knight to f6, allowing knight g5. And I think that you guys must have seen this position many times. The idea is to capture the pawn on f7. We played the move d5, ed, and now we play the move knight to d4. And our opponent must push this pawn, thinking that he is now attacking the f7 pawn again. So we capture the pawn with the queen, and here comes the move knight into f7. And white is thinking that we have simply blundered the game because our queen is also hanging and our rook. We play the move queen to c6, hitting the bishop and the pawn. Here white is having two moves. He can either go for capturing the rook, or he can either go for capturing the pawn. If he goes for capturing the rook, we simply capture the pawn. The rook move, queen check. He cannot put the queen in between because we can simply capture the queen. So putting the bishop is the fourth move, but now you all know what to play. Knight to f3, and it's a mate. So now let's talk about what happens if at the place of knight to h8 capturing the rook, if white goes for capturing the pawn. Hitting the queen and as well as also protecting the bishop. We capture the pawn on g2, rook f1 the fourth move, queen check, and it's still the same thing. Okay, but the slight difference is we cannot play the move knight f3 because here white will simply capture the knight. So we must play the move knight into c2 check. Here white is forced to sacrifice the queen, and eventually this position is winning for black. So this was the fifth trap, a very interesting trap. So now let's move on to the sixth trap. Coming to the sixth trap, we are playing with the black pieces, and our opponent starts the game with 1 e4. We play the move e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, also known as the Royal LePage opening, a6, bishop to a4, d6. And after d6, our opponent plays the move d4. His idea is to push the pawn, or maybe to even capture the pawn. If we try to capture the pawn, his idea is to capture with the knight and putting more pressure on the pawn on the knight on c6. So we are not happy with our position already with the black pieces, but we are quite happy because we are going to play the move b5. Hitting the bishop, bishop goes back, and now we are simply going to capture the pawn on d4. We are already a pawn up, so white will simply capture the knight, followed by capturing the pawn. And after queen into d4, we play the move c5. Congratulations, and now it's winning the game because we hit the queen, So if queen goes back, we can already play the move c4 and the bishop is simply trapped on b3. And we are simply going to be a piece up after one move. So after c5, white will finally put his one last cheap trap, which is to play the move queen to d5, threatening a mate in 1, followed by capturing the rook. So here, black is having the only move, which is bishop e6, attacking the queen and also defending the rook. White will give a check, or else if white moves the queen back, we can simply play the move c4. So the only move for white is to give a check, and now we play the move bishop to d7 back. And after successfully hitting the queen cannot capture the rook because we are defending it. So after queen to d5, we push the pawn to c4. There is no mate on f7, and now the bishop is trapped, and we are eventually going to be a piece up after a move, and it's completely winning position for black. So this was the 6th trap, a very interesting one, and many players are going to fall for this particular trap. So this was the 6th trap, so now let's move on to the final trap of the day, which is the 7th trap. We are playing with the white pieces, and we start the game with 1 e4, our opponent plays the move c5, knight f3, knight to c6, d4, pawn takes, knight to f6, knight to c3, e5. This particular opening is Sicilian opening, I think everyone knows it, but this particular variation is known as the Sveshnikov variation. Even top grandmasters like Magnus Carlsen played this in the past. After e5, we play the move knight to b5, which is very long theory. Our idea is to play the move knight to d6. So black stops it by playing the move d6, defending with the bishop and the queen. And here the most common way to continue the game is to play the move bishop to g5. And after a6, knight a3, b5, the game continues. But I've done some slight changes that at the place of playing the move bishop to g5, we are first going to play the move knight d5. And our idea is already to play the move knight to c7. So black kind of have to capture the knight, or else knight c7 is winning on the spot, followed by giving a check and capturing the rook. Knight into knight, pawn into hitting the knight move, and now we play the move c4. Trying to grab the center. So black is already pretty annoyed with this particular knight, so he tries to play the move a6, trying to hit the knight. But now we are going to simply jump in with the queen. If black tries to capture the knight, we can simply going to capture the rook, which is the best move for black in the particular position. And if black doesn't capture the knight, because the rook is hanging, and if we play something else, for example, if we play something like g6, the idea is bishop g7 short castle. This is not going to work because knight c7 is simply checkmate. It's a double check and it's a mate. So if, for example, if bishop d7, it's still knight into d6 and it's a mate. If queen d7, we can simply capture the pawn on d6, giving a check. The queen cannot capture because the queen is pinned. The king have to move. Knight takes pawn check, king move. We can simply trade out the queens, capture the rook, and material wise, you can simply count the material, it's a win. So hence proved this particular position is simply winning after queen a4. The best option for black is to give an exchange sacrifice, which is still winning for white. So this was the trap number 7. So we have finished the trap of the day. Trap number 7, we have discussed 7 critical traps which can simply boost your chess games. If it did, then make sure to like the video. Make sure to share this video with everyone. And after beating your friends by playing these traps, make sure to share this particular traps with your friends. So I'm going to see you soon with these critical videos and critical chess tips. If you are new to our channel, then make sure to share this video and make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell for newer videos. I'm going to see you soon, so till then stay tuned and keep watching Oneshot Chess.